Hey there, gamers, grifters, and gooners. Today I want to talk about the issue of realism in video games and when it's used as an excuse or sort of red herring by people to try to distract you from the real issues at play. I'm Fox with RealMarcFoxx. Let's get into it.
Oh yeah, baby!
You've probably noticed that with a lot of modern games made for a, quote, modern gaming audience, unquote, release nowadays, we often find that the female protagonists, or at least some of the primary female characters, really don't look all that great. Even when they're based on actresses who look pretty good, even are beautiful, the characters that they create in the game are far less so. It's not at all uncommon to see people complaining about this issue on X, other social media, YouTube, and so forth, and of course, the left-wingers and the wokies will come out and say that they hate women in games, or that they're gooners and porn-brained, or some other silly accusation of the such. They will, in fact, sometimes suggest that the reason the female character looks the way she does is because it's more realistic. A perfect example, of course, that I've talked about before is Aloy from the Horizon series. Now, I did play Horizon Zero Dawn. I played it to completion on the PlayStation 4 and played it most of the way through on the PC. Very much enjoyed having keyboard and mouse controls for that one. Horizon Forbidden West came out. I did pick it up on PC, but I haven't gotten very far because I found it has some issues. Just not as good as the first, in my opinion. Regardless of all that, Aloy is very well known for being a more realistic looking woman, and they even went out of their way to put peach fuzz on her face. Because if I recall correctly, gamers were complaining that with the increase in quality of the graphics in their games, they weren't seeing peach fuzz on people's faces. And that's really something we were demanding. Of course, anyone that complained about the peach fuzz on Aloy's face got the response from the wokies that it's more realistic, and therefore, anyone complaining about it must be an incel, a loser, a neckbeard. A loser gamer who lives in his mom's basement and only breathes through his mouth. These are generally, of course, just silly accusations that they neither could know nor is likely to be true, but the point here is that they're trying to emphasize that it's cool that she has peach fuzz on her face because it's more realistic. And now we get back to this same refrain when it comes to the release of Ghost of Yotei, or as I like to call it, Ghost of No Way, because I'm not buying it and I'm not playing it. I've got some good reasons why. I have a video about it. There's a link in the description if you want to check it out. But this character on X by the name of Oversoul Gaming said,
well, not being caked in makeup is realistic for the 1600s. Why would a woman going on a revenge quest who's going to get bruised and bloody give a flying fuck about her appearance?
Now, what he's saying is not really false. In fact, it's not false at all. But if you've watched any series on Amazon Prime or Netflix, then generally, even when you're watching a series about post-apocalyptic America or the world after a nuclear bomb, or any setting in which people are fighting a war or struggling, or just fighting to survive, you'll generally notice that the actresses are indeed wearing makeup. And not only that, but they have their hair done most of the time. They may even have it dyed. They may even have jewelry. And even though you're struggling to survive in a post-apocalyptic, post-nuclear world, it's still important to put on your makeup, do your hair, and wear that jewelry. Now, we all know this isn't realistic, but that's not the point. The point is that it's more interesting visually to see an attractive woman looking nice than to see a woman that doesn't look nice. This has always been true. Women prefer to see attractive women in fantasy media. Men also, obviously, prefer to see attractive women in fantasy media, whether it's a TV show, movie, comic book, video game, or whatever. This is simply reality. It's also biologically based for many reasons. And the reason we don't worry too much about this and get down into the nitty-gritty of how realistic it is because it's fantasy. It's not real.
Yeah,
And if we're going to talk about things that aren't realistic, why are we so focused on the fact that having beautiful women all the time wearing makeup and having their hair done and looking great and having an hourglass figure with ample-sized bosoms as being unrealistic, but we're not going to address the fact that the protagonist of most games can generally carry around anywhere from 500 pounds to 2 tons of equipment on them, and yet it doesn't slow them down at all. You've got the Ghost of Yotei protagonist, Atsu, can carry a shit ton of equipment on her, even though there doesn't appear to be anywhere on her that she could actually fit all of it. Much less could she carry it around, run, jump, fight, and do all this other stuff with these thousands of pounds of equipment. And how is it that Atsu can get slashed repeatedly, over and over again, by swords, hit with hammers, knocked around, fall off cliffs? And if she's injured, all she has to do is eat a fish or consume some other product and instantly heals up. Is that realistic? Apparently, these people like to obsess over the realism of how the female characters in these fantasy games look, while also ignoring the fact that we're casting magic, fighting dragons, there are goblins, dwarves, and elves. Obviously, none of that is realistic in the least, and yet they don't point that out. They don't point out most of the unrealistic things that are in video games nowadays. But one thing they do point out whenever you talk about the uglification of women in gaming is that all the women being beautiful 10 out of 10 models is just not realistic. And of course, we've all been outside. Contrary to what the left-wing wokies like to claim, us gamers do actually go outside. And on occasion, we do touch grass and feel the sun upon our skin. And in the process of going out, we do eventually have to see other people. And as traumatic an experience that can often be, when we see these other people, we quickly come to the realization that not everyone is an attractive person. Not everyone is in shape. And in particular, men will notice that not every woman is a fit, hourglass figure, beautiful model that would score a 10 out of 10 on their scale. And you know what? We all know this. Video games featuring beautiful women aren't going to make us think that beautiful women are everywhere all the time and they're just the norm. There are beautiful women out there. We've all seen them. I've seen them. I live with one. She's my wife. But not every woman is beautiful and thin and has an hourglass figure and a nice body like my wife does. But just playing games and seeing those beautiful fantasy women isn't going to somehow rewire our brains to ignore all the other evidence of our eyes that we see in all the rest of our lives that we live. I don't know how it is that feminists manage to convince the wokies of this, but you've got these feminists out there insisting that if boys, and actually men as well, see these beautiful, wonderful looking women in these video games, they're going to think that's the norm. They're going to think that all women should look like that. And you know what? I'm going to think that all women should be able to get swiped by the giant spiky tail of a robotic dinosaur, land on the ground, and then all she has to do is eat some herbs, and she's totally fine. In fact, she can fall from a great distance and injure herself, but nothing gets broken. Again, just pop a few herbs, and you're good to go. I'm also going to think that that beautiful woman can get blasted with the intense heat of the fire breath of a dragon, set on fire for an extended period of time. And all she needs to do is pop a potion, usually red in color. She just drinks that potion and all the damage goes away. All the injury is gone. So I know when I'm walking outside, if I somehow happen to get hit by a car or something else tragic happens to me, I just need to pull out those herbs, maybe grab a potion, suck it down, and I'm all good to go. Right, fellas? Obviously, all of this is being facetious, and unfortunately, a lot of the wokies that say the silly things they say don't realize they're being silly. Yes, we know it would be more realistic to see a more plain-looking woman. Not always, but in general, not all women are going to be way up there on the scale of beauty. We know that. The law of averages is just going to tell us that most women will probably look average. And nowadays, unfortunately, in many Western societies, with all the garbage food and the garbage environment we have, we're finding a lot of people, not just women, also men, are looking below average in general. But then again, that's a self-defeating thing to say. Not everyone can be below average, because then the new average goes down to that new low point. Long story short, my fellow gamers, grifters, and gooners, whenever you see one of these left-wing wokies or anyone else try to claim that it's okay to uglify women in games, or that it's okay to feature plain, boring-looking women with lots of flaws and maybe put excessive freckles and peach fuzz and give them a little bit of extra weight on their belly or something like that. All that is totally cool and a great idea for games because it's more realistic. Well, you might want to remind them that realism is not necessarily what sells, and realism isn't necessarily fun. After all, how fun would Ghost of Yote be if you always had to stop to sleep? You had to sleep every day for an extended period of time. You had to keep drinking and eating. You had to take a shit, and you had to pee. How fun would that be? And how about occasionally Atsu will get sick and not feel well? And how about the game simulates when she has a headache? And you know what else would be realistic? When you have to watch out what you're wearing and doing because Atsu is on her period. Would any of this improve the gameplay? Would any of this improve the story? Would any of this improve your enjoyment of the game? And the answer is generally going to be no. There may be some niche cases where you can put stupid stuff like that in a game. After all, there's a game that's coming out, or either has come out, I don't know, called Baby Steps, in which you essentially guide a idiotic person, I was going to use a different word, you guide an idiotic person to the closest toilet so he can pee, but he has trouble walking, and so it's basically streamer bait for people to play on streams and laugh at. And of course, they made this guy less than attractive because it fits with the whole aesthetic and environment of the game. And you may decide that next time you play Elden Ring, you're going to make the ugliest, weirdest, craziest looking character that you can. But you're doing that because it's stupid and silly. But when it comes time to play a game where you get to be the heroine, that's right, a female, you get to be a female fighting the bad guys, I highly doubt that you, me, or anyone, male or female, the only two genders that actually exist, nobody wants to see an ugly woman. It's just not a thing. Nobody, for the most part, wants to see an ugly man. You might make a man or a woman ugly in a video game, but that's generally done for the purposes of making the player or the viewer of the content not like them. Because when you make someone unattractive, that tells the audience you should dislike this person, as a general rule. Not always, there are exceptions. So no, in most cases, games aren't about realism. There are some simulation games that try to simulate a certain degree of realism, but full-on 100% realism is never the goal in a fantasy video game, because video games are about escapism. Video games are about fun. Video games should be nice to look at. They don't have to have amazing graphics. Could be pixel art, could be pretty simple, but you want to be able to enjoy what you're looking at. I don't want to play as a frumpy, ugly, unattractive female. I also don't want to play as a portly, overweight, balding, ugly-looking dude. That's just not my style. No offense to anyone that's balding, but all men know, having hair is better than not. I got a little off track on this one, guys, but I wanted to address this silly thing that people say about how it's more realistic. Maybe, but that's not the point. And that's not even the goal. Never should the goal be to make a game more realistic at the expense of fun and enjoyment. When it comes to realism in games, the number one question the developer should ask themselves: does this realism make the game more fun? And if it doesn't, then don't do it. One reason why Stellar Blade is so much fun, and only one reason, not the only reason, is because Eve is an absolutely beautiful character. She's an amazing looking woman, and you enjoy looking at her. Women would prefer to see Eve than Aloy, as a general rule. Can't speak for everyone, lots of people in the world obviously, but most men and most women, even when surveyed, prefer attractive men and women in their media. So as you're playing Stellar Blade and getting new outfits, it's more fun to dress her up in the new outfit because she looks attractive. Nobody wants to play dress up with an ugly woman. Sorry, it's just the way it is. But what do you guys think? I really do want to know. I read every comment that you leave, and it's extremely helpful when you do leave them. Make sure to subscribe, like the video, and if you'd be so inclined to throw a few bucks my way, I started a new Patreon where you can support me and what I do here and get some awesome shoutouts in my videos. Or you can just join the channel. It's as cheap as $2 a month. And a huge special thank you and shout out to our first Patreon supporter, Freeman Phil. You, my friend, are amazing and awesome, and you are the vanguard of the G3 Brigade's Patreon. And on that note, gamers, grifters, and gooners, thank you so much for watching. I'm Fox with RealMarcFoxx, and I will see you next time.